Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Healthy Chicago podcast. My name is Greg Martinez. I have the pleasure of overseeing the Community Safety Coordination Center, and I'm going to let my guest introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Joseph Mapp. I am the director for the Mayor's Office of Reentry.
Thank you so much for being on the show today, Director Mapp. As overseeing the Community Safety Coordination Center, one of our charges is to coordinate our violence prevention resources across the city and drive them to the areas and the people most acutely impacted by violence. Now, understandably, there is an intersection between reentry work and violence prevention work and community safety. One of those things that we can talk about is that, a lot of the returning residents that come back to Chicago are coming back to communities that are already experiencing really high rates of violence. And so that adds fuel to the fire. There's already limited opportunities, and it just makes it even harder for our returning residents to find those opportunities to integrate back into society. But with that being said, I would love for you to share a little bit about your personal journey and really what led you into this work of reentry.
Thank you for that opportunity. I would first like to highlight that returning residents are not so much community safety concerns, but more community stabilizers. As you know, many of them go off into supporting the community violence intervention work, which helps stabilize the community. So I'm appreciative of all the individuals that's supporting that work and for your leadership. And to speak a little bit about my journey to this point, it's interesting to me. As many people may know, I am system impacted. But while I was system impacted, when I was incarcerated, I had the opportunity of experiencing a humanizing education from a college and prison program, which prepared me for leadership, so to speak, because they invested in us. They had a model that really caught my attention. It was a hybrid model of leadership where it was a top-down and bottom-up approach where we participated in the development of programs, curriculum, and even workshops, and was even invited to write proposals for programs, which I took that initiative to write a proposal for a community anti-violence education program, which is still in existence now in the IDOC, and it's being replicated in 3 other prisons.
Wow, congratulations on that. That's amazing.
No, it was a collaborative effort because it was many individuals who participated in that process and actually built it out to what it is today. So I'm thankful for that. Upon release, something that I had that many other individuals do not have is I had a strong support system. I had family and friends who supported me in my transition. I had a peer support group who actually supported, and we convened to help each other do the social, psycho-emotional aspect of returning back to community. And I was supported by one of the reentry community-based organizations that has a policy of accompaniment that helped me engage in certain systems which I was not too comfortable with. And I think all of these things coming together helped prepare me for this moment.
Wow, that's a very powerful story. You obviously have had a lot of challenges to getting to the place that you're at. Not many people get the opportunity to be in the place that you're in providing these valuable resources, these valuable connections to all returning residents coming back to Chicago. Just to add, or just to build up on the question from earlier, what motivated you to be in this work? Obviously you've had some lived experience. You've walked the same path a lot of the people that you work with, right? But what personally led you to want to give back? And I'm assuming not having, providing better access and pathways for people returning back from incarceration.
What inspired me was the fact that I was given an opportunity. At what would have been my lowest point, many people wrapped their arms around me to support me and to hold me up. That was during incarceration. Some individuals who were considered unredeemable was the major influences in my life that encouraged me to continue my education. And then when I was able to get in the educational space, people humanized me. They saw me, not as an inmate or as a convict, but as a person that was worthy of attention and worthy to be heard. This is what motivates me, and I recognize you can have 1,000 of me's if we thoroughly support individuals. If we create the systems that can allow individuals to reintegrate back into society, to engage in family reunification in a holistic way, I believe these individuals can be successful as well. I am not an anomaly. I am striving to be the norm.
Wow. Again, very powerful story, and I think it's even more impactful of having people, again, such as yourselves, who have gone through this experience to be in these places. I think it's very important to have to lift up those voices who are system impacted, because who better else to provide this kind of guidance, type of policy changes, but for the people that have been part of the system. So thank you very much for that. And now that you've shared a little bit about your story, and now that you being here, the director of Reentry for the city of Chicago, can you please just let us know just what are some of the things that the city, that your office is doing right now to support residents who are returning to our communities?
So especially, I like this point. I am excited when we get to talk about this, because right now my office is coordinating and collaborating with different city departments and agencies to ensure that every one touch point as it relates to reentry is treating individuals in a dignified way. And what that looks like is, for the first time in corporate coalition's history, that you have 3 city departments that's collaborating to support corporations in addressing their hiring policies and practices, so they can begin to draw from this talent pool of returning residents. This is in a drive to create opportunities for not only economic stability, but also economic mobility. We want to move beyond entry-level employment. We want to put people in a position that they can not only support themselves, but support their families, and in essence, create a better community.
You touched on one of the, I think one of the main barriers of people returning back from incarceration. That, amongst many others, but employment, right? There is a lot of barriers to getting employment, whether it's the criminal background, the stigma of having a criminal record, the inability to travel, the lack of transportation, right? So there's a lot of barriers to employment. And you just touched on some of the work that you're doing at the city is to engage employers. So as you said, not entry-level jobs that don't really have a career pathway. So it's very hard for returning residents to build in their career. And as you said, right, it's those living wages that are very important for not just returning residents, right, but for everybody, especially for returning residents. What is some of the work that you expand on that you're doing to engage employers to be part of this work?
Oh, thank you. So currently, the Office of Reentry, Department of Human Resources, and Department of Family and Support Services are collaborating with 14 corporations to begin to explore their policies and how do they affect or create unnecessary barriers to employment. What that looks like is not only policies, but shifting mindsets. When you begin to see people with value, you begin to look for ways to add value. This is what this office is striving for in that instance. And not just with employers, we also are recognizing that it's individual-based. So we take a two-pronged approach, similar to that, matter of fact, not similar, in alignment with the People's Plan, and that we do a people and place-based approach. People, we offer workforce development so individuals can learn the skills and the soft skills necessary to advance in the workspace, as well as challenging business and mid-level employers to begin to rethink about how they view this population.
That's amazing. Again, having those employers at the table and being collaborative partners is key. As I'd mentioned earlier, it's one of those foundational pieces that returning residents absolutely need to be successful back into community. So I am super excited that you're working with those employers to increase the access and opportunity for those folks. I also want to touch on, I know another piece of work that your team has worked on and has been successful, but just changing even some of the hiring policies here at the city of Chicago to increase, access to the city jobs that, traditionally maybe some returning residents have not been able to take a part of.
Oh, sure, that's great. Thank you for highlighting that, because one of the challenges we think about with the city, if we're going to lead the efforts and model the behavior that we want to business and private sector to emulate, we have to start here first. So in that way, we're now reviewing policies. Already the city has established a 5-year to 7-year look-back period. 5 years for city departments. If you had a conviction that's more than 5 years old and it does not directly relate to the job in which you're applying for, it will not be held against you. and it's a 7-year look-back policy for City Hall. But in addition to that, this office has worked with the Department of Human Resources to ensure that every new job posting has language to encourage those who are system impacted, who normally would selectively remove themselves from the pool, believing that they don't have an opportunity. We want to communicate to them, you should be in line to apply, because we want to create equitable accessibility to city employment as well.
I mean, that's just great. As we like to say, we want to put a little skin in the game too ourselves as the city of Chicago. So we're not just talking the talk, but also walking the walk of increasing that accessibility for these city jobs for folks who are returning back from incarceration. So I appreciate, you and all the work that you and your team have done to get that over the finish line. Again, just it's great for the city to, again, back up what they're saying out publicly. The other thing I wanted you to add as part of this too is you have an amazing team that is all working, to achieve these reentry goals. Could you just talk a little bit about the composition of your team and what individually they are working on as well?
Yes, sure. So I have right now 2 individuals and currently in the process of hiring a third. I have a senior project manager, which is Christina Williams, and she's great. She's awesome. You've spent time with her. Currently, she's working on with Youth of Highest Promise to develop reentry strategies for youth that are leaving juvenile detention centers, so we can ensure that they become reacclimated back into the educational process, back into community life without feeling stigmatized. Because oftentimes, if youth are not supported leaving these facilities, the probability of them graduating to a penal institution is very high. We want to stop that early on. So that's some of the work that Christina is doing. Jasmine Valadez, which is also my project manager, she's great as well. You got me smiling about both of them. So Jasmine is currently working on service navigation. So we recognize that it's important not only to connect individuals to services, but to ensure it's a standard of care, at least across all city-funded organizations, that individuals can receive the same quality of care irrespective to the side of town that they're on. So we recognize that, like you mentioned earlier, transportation is a challenge. We don't want individuals to have to travel all the way to one side of town just to receive a quality of service. So we're ensuring that this service is quality and dignified, and the people that's supporting them understands their journey, and they can also walk with them along that process, creating individualized success plans that may look different from individuals who are returning.
Oh, that's amazing. I think what you're talking about is really a broad strategy that's not just focusing on one of the factors that limits returning residents from being successful back in community. So you're talking about young people, right? I think oftentimes we think returning residents, our mind immediately goes to the older population. But you made a very great point that we have a juvenile justice system that also has a lot of young people in it. And those same issues that adults are facing are the same ones that young people are facing. And they could be exacerbated because they are young people. They don't have their brains haven't matured yet. They don't have the access to resources maybe like an adult might have. And so having your team work on these different pieces of the reentry puzzle, I think is, really amazing. It's going to be an effective strategy. So the young people, but also, the employers, the service navigation piece. I think that, it's very difficult for all of the reasons that we'd already talked about for a returning resident to be successful. But one of those main pain points is just a lack of awareness and education of what resources are out there for folks to engage in. Could you talk a little bit about that service navigation piece and what your team is trying to accomplish with creating a better system for returning residents to access that often life-saving information?
Sure, of course. Thank you for that question. So when you think about service navigation, what people are unaware of is when individuals return back to community, oftentimes they do not have the know-how or the awareness of what's available to them, so they begin to look. And oftentimes they travel from community-based organization to service provider, only being piecemeal for what services they may need, because as you've mentioned and I've mentioned, there's a whole host of services that's required to help a person stabilize back into community. So what our department is focused on is how do we create a system that engages not only this office but engages is city departments. That's the full force of government where we're approaching that. To give you an example, oftentimes some departments you don't think they play a role in supporting individuals from incarceration, but I'm going to give you an example because I reconvened the Interdepartmental Reentry Council, and that consists of city departments and agencies. To give you an example, at our last convening, Chicago Public Libraries made an example because they do not stigmatize people when they come into those spaces, asking them, do you have a background, are you system impacted? But they're proactive. They're deciding to create a program where they have once a month book clubs, and they're inviting authors who were system impacted to come and present and invite the rest of the community there. So when you think about the city colleges of Chicago, they have a Weekend Warriors program, and we're driving support so those who feel disconnected from the educational system can now find ways to be supported to re-enter back into this system, because education and employment tends to go hand in hand. So it's a multi-pronged approach, as well as my office has convened a reentry steering committee, and what that consists of is various stakeholders throughout the city, subject matter experts. You think about, we have someone from the Illinois Department of Corrections, we have someone from the Public Defender's Office, we have someone from parole, we have youth, and most importantly, we have voices of those who are system impacted to inform and help shape the policies and the practice that this office wants to drive. Because we recognize the wisdom is not located in one location, but those who are close to the problem are in proximity to the solution, and we want to build on that.
Very strong words there at the very end. I think I might steal that line. So a couple follow-ups there. You mentioned, and this is a very similar principle that comes out of public health and viewing violence prevention as a public health issue. But working across, various departments, driving all of the, as many resources as possible to the problem. In this case, reentry. We do very similar things, right, with violence prevention. So you mentioned working with various departments, Chicago Public Library for one, like how people don't necessarily think that there's an intersection between reentry and the public libraries. One of the things that I've learned over my years working in this space is that people utilize the libraries. The number one reason people go into the library is to look for a job. Right? So I think, returning residents obviously use that free resource for technology and for all other kinds of things. But could you give some examples of just beyond the public libraries, what other departments are doing to help, the reentry cause in the city of Chicago?
So thank you. As I mentioned, Department of Human Resources are beginning to look at the policies and practices around hiring for the city, and we're addressing those. We're in collaboration. All of the work I've mentioned is not solely the Office of Reentry. So anytime I talk, I say we, because it's important to lift up all the people that's playing a part in advancing this work. So when you think about Department of Transportation. Department of Transportation has a Spring Forward program where they hire individuals and they offer training as they're hiring to beautify the city. So it's two-pronged. They begin to beautify the city and they learn a marketable skill. Some of them go off to gain employment in different spaces, as well as the Department of Transportation create employment opportunities for the individuals that they've trained. We also have Department of Family and Supportive Services, which offers workforce development programs, which begin to work with individuals and work to place them in different employments, different places of employment according to their skill set or their development, and even recognizing or helping to pull out of individuals the transferable skills they didn't recognize they had. So what we like to do is encourage people not to be stigmatized, but to find purpose.
Yeah, those are some great examples of, again, just, some examples of, this makes a lot of sense, working with, our largest human service provider to help, people with access and education about these available resources. But again, some other ones that people might not necessarily think have a role to play in reentry. And then, so, my follow-up question is something that we touched on at the very beginning, and then you've kind of been sprinkling it throughout your answers, which I think, is part and parcel of how you think, your philosophy. I also, want to give kudos to this administration and our mayor, Office of Community Safety, Deputy Mayor Gary Gatewood, they very much believe in that idea that we must put people in power in leadership who have experienced the same things of the folks that we're trying to work with, right?
Yes.
Why do you think it's so important to have people who have lived experience be in these leadership positions, much like yourself?
Thank you. That's a great question. So I think it's important because people with lived experience bring a level of insight, wisdom, and accountability to a lot of these systems that at times may be lacking or overlooked. Not intentionally, but because people are not aware of what barriers are erected for those returning from incarceration. I think having this lived experience put me in position that I am in proximity with you. I am empathetic to the challenges that you face, and I understand, not exactly, but I understand enough to connect with you and to begin to walk through that process with you, and recognizing that I'm accompanying you through that process and letting you define what success looks like for yourself. So for individuals to be in these roles, also it communicates hope. It communicates that this is much larger than reentry. This is about a mindset shift. If we can begin to see individuals not as risks to be managed, but see individuals as people worthy of investment, we shift the way in which we support one another, and we can change the whole dynamic of this city.
Wow. Yeah, those are, again, very powerful words. And I am very lucky to be working alongside you and your leadership and, your lived experience. I think it provides a perspective, as you were mentioning, that it's just you cannot have without walking through the same, pathways that other folks have. So, that's just really amazing. Joseph, so it's by no accident that that you were invited. Last month was Second Chance Month. Could you speak a little bit about what your office is doing to uplift and celebrate National Second Chance Month?
Yes, for Second Chance Month, we've held a reentry convening where we've had cross-sector collaboration from city government, community-based organizations, philanthropy, and system-impacted individuals to brainstorm around ways and to collaborate for possible strategies for addressing reentry. As well as our city's commitment is not just Second Chance Month, but all year thinking about how do we commit to creating chances for those who are returning from incarceration. Some individuals may need second, third, or even fourth chances, and not stigmatizing them is important. When individuals fall down, we have to create the pathways for them to stand up, and not only stand up, but to thrive. And this administration is committed to ensure that this population is being supported. So April the 30th is an opportunity for individuals from philanthropic community, from city government, and state government as well, because if I haven't mentioned, I have been able to collaborate with intergovernmental agents and agencies to begin to explore and see how we can expand our reach of reentry. Quite naturally, we have, since Chicago is within Cook County, we have the Justice Advisory Council that also will be in attendance. We have funders that will talk about what it is they're looking for and what it is that they are encouraged to invest in. So it's an opportunity for community-based organizations to learn how they can seek out funding opportunities, as well as to collaborate and create opportunities to close the gap so we can support individuals that much more better.
That's amazing, and I'm sure we'll be able to link registration as part of this episode, so folks who want to join can also join and hear all the amazing collaborations and information that you and your team are putting together. I think you also touched on a really key piece of our strategy, which is the coordination. Right, it's both our external community partners, but it's also our internal folks. Right, it's our state agencies, it's our county government, county counterparts as well. And so the more people we have at the table, the more coordination there is, the more return on investment there is on those strategies. So I also applaud you and your team for doing that work, which is not easy, right? But it's very, I think, key into ensuring that the reentry infrastructure is as strong as it can be, not just in Cook County, but the state of Illinois as well. So
Chicago alone absorbed at least 44% of the IDOC population returning back to Chicago. We want to ensure every individual returning to Chicago has the opportunity for success. We want to recognize and we want to help move this population from being stigmatized to being identified as Chicagoans who are returning home. Let's support Chicagoans.
Absolutely. Can't underscore that enough. And with, I think our wrap up question here is, I'm sure that there's folks out there who are curious. Well, how do I access these resources? One of the lesser known things is that a lot of us know returning residents. It could be a relative, it could be a friend, right? And so always there's somebody who's going to need those services. So what is your call to action? Where can people access these resources? How can they access your office to get involved in this work?
Sure. We're building out a Reentry website that can be more interactive, that will have a landing page that can provide information to all the different service providers that people can be connected with. And I don't want people to be pigeonholed to think service providers are only Reentry, because those returning residents need the same similar services as anyone that's never left Chicago. So we want to ensure that our community reentry service centers are identified. You can look at them online. We have them 5 located throughout the city. In the Austin area, which is Safer Foundation, in Inglewood, we have Teamwork Inglewood and Centers for New Horizons. In the far south side, we have Community Assistance Program, and up on the north side as well, we have Howard area. So, and if that doesn't work, and if people have traveling challenges, they also can call 211. This office has worked with 211 Metro to implement a question. When individuals call, the question would ask them, are they system impacted, or are they a loved one of someone that's system impacted? So they can be better supported and identified to get the resources that they so desperately need.
Well, thank you so much for that answer. I mean, those are invaluable resources. So for the audience listening, those are tangible resources that can be accessed today for those loved ones or for yourself if need be. And with that, Joseph, I want to thank you for your time, and thank you everybody in the audience. Thank you for everybody. That's the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate this time, and I hope we can talk more.